Hey yo, KenDeep aka Satchio here, long time no see. The Project L alpha has concluded recently, and while Germany didn't get any alpha keys, we still had the chance to see everyone else play and test the game. Yeah, I refuse to call it 2xKO, sue me right? While I was initially skeptical about the game, I think Riot is onto something really awesome. It's a fighting game that finally embraces the history of its genre while still offering some incredibly new ideas that make it unique. I don't want to waste your time with analyzing the gameplay though. There are more than enough people who actually played the game to do that. Instead, I want to use my expertise in the UI area to see what Project L does great and what might still be worth improving. One thing straight up, I think the designers at Riot did a great job with a lot of things. This being an alpha, I assume that for some aspects they simply have not implemented their designs properly yet, and on others they are still iterating the components dependent on feedback. While I do not agree with every design decision that they have made, I am very confident in the team making a finished, polished and a complete product. Let's go over some positive notes first. The game is very fast to navigate and play. It takes very little time to rematch, it's quick to get into a lobby, and the load times are incredibly fast. This makes for a smooth matchmaking experience, as it's easy to go from match to match, which is especially important for a game that has duo queuing available. Speaking of matchmaking, while I agree that the avatar lobby is an unpopular choice and misfit in a lot of current fighting games, I do feel that they work well and are nicely implemented. You can find a match very easily by pressing the square button. The direction of the cap is indicated by a very intuitive pulsating animation, and it's very quick to match, even if you are duoing. And even if you just chill in the lobby, being able to spectate without entering the match itself is simply revolutionary, not to exaggerate. It really makes you want to play yourself, while easily making replays and stealing tech accessible. As long as Ranked is not built in a similar manner, I feel the avatar lobby is an overall success. But since this matchmaking can be very selective, which is also a huge issue with the Strive Celestial lobbies, they need to make sure to alter or downright forfeit this approach for the competitive matchmaking system. Another thing that I really appreciate is the feedback in-game. While there are some elements that I think need work, and I will get back to that later, overall it was easy to gather information when you were actively looking for set information. The size of elements are great, the health bar is easily readable, and the formation of all components makes sense. Furthermore, it's easy to perceive if you landed a hit or got blocked just by the sound design. So on a fundamental level, Project L is a fighting game that feels good to play. Lastly, the artistic vision for the UI is strong. While it doesn't deviate a lot from recent Riot work, especially when it comes to their marketing visuals, it plays nicely into the 2D world and has its own feel. This is how you can make a UI flat and simple without losing the look and feel of your overall project. Take note, Strive. While the visuals are very striking, they sometimes take priority over readability, such as the timer in the rematch menu being unclear, or the names of some characters being hidden in the versus screen. In the main menu specifically, a lot of the structural flow is given up on to build a beautiful frame. This makes it actually difficult to understand how to navigate to the practice menu, but also in which part of the menu nesting you are, which tab is currently active, and so on. You can probably fix this by changing some phrases, like play instead of fight, and also by making the tab navigation behavior more consistent. Currently, you have the 2xKO logo on the top left part of the screen, which users will disregard as a logo placement rather than a tab navigation element. This quite probably causes them to ignore that portion of the screen until they enter the lobby, making them unlikely to notice the several game modes available. By making the 2xKO a normal icon plus label element, you'd give them more reason to stay interested in that section and perceive that area as a tab navigation area. Redesign the tabs so that it covers the complete horizontal space, to make it more visible that those are the category tabs that define the content below it, and I think a lot less people will have issues finding the practice mode, for example. I also feel that the in-game UI needs a lot of adjustment. I mentioned before that the UI is really good at allowing players to perceive information actively. However, one weakness of the UI right now is allowing the players to perceive information passively. While I'm sure that there are still a lot of things that are work in progress, I want to list some needs just to make sure that the developers are aware of them. The timer needs an indicator when nearing timeout. The punish indicator and the counter hit indicator are way too small, making it difficult to perceive that information. The burst gauge needs a separate visual for when it is full, for example a big label burst substituting the bar itself. so it is easier to perceive when you have burst available without looking at it. The assist indicator is too inaccessible since it is visually tucked too much into the corner behind other elements. The behavior of the life bar and the super bar is inconsistent when taking into a different character, making spur of the moment information difficult to retrieve. A lot of the special effects share the same color in the green shade, making it sometimes difficult to understand which character is tagged in and what is happening. The score indicator is missing from the in-game UI, while it exists in the lobby. The combo counter is good, but once it turns gray, it is impossible to see which following hits are still invalid, making learning routes on the fly more difficult. During level 2s, while I understand making the life bar invisible, I do think at least the super bars should be visible still. A lot of the decision making after the super is dependent on resource management, and this is another area where Riot prioritizes visuals over usability. The player 1 arrow when tagging someone in can sometimes not be enough to identify which characters you are controlling. It would be better to substitute the label for the nickname of the player. Overall, while this might seem like much, the designers still did a really good job for an alpha, and some of these things are not even bad designs per se, but just simply design choices meant to achieve certain goals. I personally would have tried to create an HUD where the life bar and the super bar are both on the top visually grouped with each player in order to make associations clearer, and move the assist indicator as well as the burst gauge to the bottom. However, I could see this being problematic as well, and all in all, that is a matter of design approach. Lastly, the lobbies are, while working really well for casual play, still not perfect. The nature of the lobby makes it possible to not find a match even in a full lobby, as sometimes players will just want to spectate and others will already be in a match. Limiting the player pool to such a degree is troublesome when you just want to play a bunch of matches and needs to be fixed by either allowing players to join separate casual lobbies or by making the actual ranked matchmaking open to a much wider player pool. It's also currently really difficult to see which is active as a duo and who is a single player. I don't think this is an information necessarily needed, but in case that there will be a competition for both modes, it would be nice to be able to matchmake specifically for one or the other. The lobbies are also apparently missing some fundamental functionalities, such as a player list, a score list, and connection indicators before starting a match. This is just a very high-level observation of the UI and UX of Project L. While I have critiqued quite a bit now, I want to reiterate, the design team has done a great job with the project so far, considering it is a real alpha. The practice mode looks pretty much feature complete except for the absence of a save state manager. The matchmaking has looked smooth on every streamer, and people were obviously already able to advance the meta of the game in these few playable days, which would not be possible if the game was difficult to play visually. Some elements such as the button mapping are obviously placeholder, and I'm really looking forward to see what the whole 2xKO team is going to cook from here on out. Damn, now I actually called them 2xKO.